So folks, Mike Handcock here, again, launching the David Clarke series of books. And it's been a journey of a number of years now to launch these books and to bring them to life. And I want to tell you a little bit of background about why I went ahead and did this. One, it was always a childhood dream to be a writer and a novelist. I used to write plays at school and we performed them. And I wrote short stories and small books and things like that. But then I got into writing my first non-fiction book, and it was launched just over 20 years ago now in 2001. I was very lucky that that was timely and it was for a marketplace, and it really did well and became an international bestseller. And that set me off on the writing curve where I did win some awards, learned from an amazing author called Richard Webster, who's written somewhere around 70 bestsellers. And most of them are ghost-written for other people. But I really always wanted to write these novels, and I always wanted to tell a good story. I've spent a lot of my life studying deep ancient wisdom, looking at history with a different light on it, and looking at it from a perspective of, have we been taught the truth in school? Some things don't just make sense. We were taught in school that civilization is only 5,000 years old. Well, I've led tours to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and that ancient site in itself actually proves that history is a lot more than just 5,000 years old civilized history. So let's get into the presentation I want to share with you today. I'm going to take you a little bit through the three books, and of course you can buy them on Amazon Kindle, and I would love you to do this. But I also want to inspire you through this to live out one of your dreams, something that's been sitting in the back of your mind saying, I can't rest until I do this. So with that, let's jump into the books themselves. So as you can see, we have the three novels there. Truthseekers is the first novel, and I actually started writing that back in 2015. And that was a journey there, all of itself of bringing the characters to life. The three characters that feature in the books, the three main characters, are David Clarke. David's a guy who, along with his business partner, Rocco Risotto, who's a really rough and tough Middle Eastern New Yorker, started a tech company and was successful in selling that and making a considerable amount of money, which gave them the idealism to go and hunt out and seek the truth in the world. And they really felt that there were things that should be shared that have been hidden from us, the general populace, and they really wanted to bring them forward. And the first book takes us on a journey of what that happens. Then we move into the second book, KV55, which is set in Egypt and is all about the Pharaoh Akhenaten, and I'm going to talk about that one soon. And then into the third book in the series, Ancestry, which is really about the rise again of the Fourth Reich as well. So these books, and part of the reason I wrote them, is to tell untold stories or stories that may pique your interest. They're all heavily researched. And as you see, I'm going to share some of the photos from some of my research as well as we've gone through the last few years of putting these together. Lundy, my beautiful wife and partner, suggested to me that I get super serious with these just as the pandemic arrived. At that stage, I was starting to write KV55, and what she encouraged me to do was to go out and find the best possible editor that I could find. And I did that. I found a lady, Sue Paulson, lives in Cambridge. That should tell you enough about her command of the English language. And she was an editor on Dan Brown's novels, The Da Vinci Code, and some of his other ones, Angels and Demons. She was an editor in Lee Child's series, the Jack Reacher series, which television shows and movies. I think Tom Cruise played him in the movie. And she's done a number of other of those type of works as well, which is high action, high adventure. And that's what these particular novels are. They're high action, high adventure. Don't expect to sit still and go into a boring history story in these novels. It's not going to happen. That story weaves in and out of the action adventure. So if you're the type of person who grabs the remote, goes to Netflix and looks for something with action, adventure, a little bit of mystery, think National Treasure, Nicolas Cage, think Da Vinci Code, think those type of things. You know, if you love Clive Cussler and, you know, watch Matthew McConaughey and Sahara and things like that. If you love Clive, if you love James Rowland, who's a little bit more gritty, or Ernest Dempsey, who writes there, or any of those sort of novelists, you're going to really enjoy these. If you like Lee Child, he's a lot more psychological. I'm not quite as psychological as Lee Child in the way in which I write these. These are much lighter reads than the deep psychology, and I can promise you there's no tearing people's livers out and throwing them in your face either. You don't have to be too scared about that, but there is a little bit of blood and guts in these novels as well. So let's jump into Truthseekers. This was the first novel, as I said. I penned this in 2015, 2016, I think it came out. The characters there in the novel are David Clarke, who is really an idealist. David's somebody who doesn't like violence. So, you know, pretty strange in a novel where a lot of people get shot up. So how David's going to deal with that, I don't know. You'll have to dig into that. And Rocco Risotto, his partner, is a little bit more rough and tumble. There's no doubt about that. But through the course of the novel, they meet Abby Beck, and she's the female hero in the book, the heroine in the book, and she has a fairly dark past where she was in the military at a very, very high level. And while she has all the charisma of a runway model, she also has all the fight and can bring it at any time. So this novel is based on a concept that fascinated me at the time, and it was the hooked X. And it's the concept that around the world, the Templar Knights, which are key to this novel, placed signs for the bloodline of Jesus Christ and their sacred symbols and their sacred wealth that they got from digging under the Temple Mount all the time from 1119 to 1128, and then hoarding that wealth, the menorah, the Ark of the Covenant, taking it back to France originally, hiding it, and then becoming the wealthiest order on the planet, where they were in a position just under 100 years later, where they were literally the bankers for the kings and queens of Europe, and they lent money, and they were actually more powerful than the Vatican itself. So it's the story of the hooked X, which is the Templars' journey to trying to hide the bloodline of Jesus Christ. Now, I know you've heard about that in Dan Brown, because that was really what the Da Vinci Code was about, but this has nothing to do with that as well. It just picks up on the trail of the hooked X. And there are some fascinating things in history that I bring up in the book. The Kensington runestone, which is a runestone Viking carved in Minnesota, which goes back 1,000 years, essentially, which is on the trail, has hooked X on it. I talk about here the Minoans as well, and the Minoans are an ancient Greek race living on the island of Crete, and they sailed the seven seas back 3,500 years ago. So I bring a lot of their wisdom to the fore in this book. You know, they literally sailed before Columbus, before the Vikings, to America 3,500 years ago, across the Atlantic Ocean, into the Gulf of Mexico, up the Mississippi River in reverse, on triremes. They are boats with 3 sets of oars stacked 3 stories high, and went right up to Lake Superior. So think of the Great Lakes of America, where they found and mined tin and bronze for the Bronze Age to create weapons, because that's what everybody did in the Bronze Age. They were after the metals. And so that's where they found them. And then they expatriated those metals right back to Greece and Minoa at that point. So I tell about that story because it weaves in with the American Indians, particularly the Ojibwa and the Chippewa tribes as well. And those tribes have got Minoan DNA. And the Minoans in this novel, in Truthseekers, have something to do with the protection of the bloodline. So I think you'll find that really interesting. So in this book, we get to go to Cambodia, where we find the hooked X. We get to go to South Africa, which is the home of Abby Beck. We get to go into South America on a journey there where we're hunting again the hooked X. And then we're also, of course, in this book, we end up in Greece and we end up at the Minoan temples as well. So be aware that the bad guys in this book are the 13 families that pretty much control all the flow of money on this planet. And whilst I can't name them on this video or in the book and do not want to, you will definitely see some indications of who they are in the book there. And it comes from a premise that I had personally where I thought, what if every time the American president is voted in, that they go from taking their oath into a back room where actually in that back room, 13 people sit around the table and now tell the president what they're going to do. Now, I don't know if that happens or not, but if you look at some of the presidents of recent history, you could definitely think that that could be something controlling them. We all know that the president doesn't have any real power. You know, Congress holds the power there. And but what if there's something, a higher power behind all them? These are books, and Truthseekers is one where I like to share a lot of ancient wisdom. Everybody's enamored with the Templar Knights, with how they, you know, raised up in France, owned the Holy Land, you know, had the first banking system in Europe, the first real credit card, if you like, back in the 12th century, and then were persecuted by, you know, Philip the Fair and the Emperor Constantine on the 13th of October, 1307, which is why we have Friday the 13th these days. And then, of course, the order was totally disbanded. Jacques de Molay, who was the Grand Master at that stage, slow roasted at the stake outside Notre Dame Temple in France 7 years later. But during that 7 years, they couldn't round up all of them. They went to Portugal, they went to Italy, and they went to America. And during that time, you know, if you've ever watched The Curse of Oak Island, then you'll see that it's all about Templar treasure being buried off the shores of Halifax, Nova Scotia on Oak Island. A fascinating show, and I think they've proven on that show beyond all reasonable doubt that Templar evidence was on Oak Island as well. But then in my book, we don't focus on Oak Island at all, but we focus on what they're doing around Rhode Island, which is another Templar strong port. There's a castle in Rhode Island that goes right back to Templar times. And we talk about the Kensington runestone, and we trace that faction of the Templars there. The wisdom that I'm bringing to you is the wisdom to look beyond what you've learned at school, to look beyond what we were taught, to look beyond what mainstream media tells you. Get off CNN, get off Fox, get off Sky, get off whatever your mainstream media is, and do your own research. Start to read books that were printed before the 1960s when the truth was still out there. Start to investigate old television shows that did real research, and you will start to understand. Read the ancient books, and you will understand what was really going on there. For me in this journey, going right back to 2013, top left photo here, when along with my business partner at the time, I led the Templar Knights tour with Don Tolman, a good friend of mine, into France. I think we had 65 people on the tour. Going to the right, top middle there, you'll see me in Carcassonne, which was at one time a Cathar and Templar foothold in the south of France there, actually doing a sacred ceremony in the square there, which I used a little bit of what we learned in these times on this in the Truthseekers book. You'll see me on the far right there, leading people through the village of Avignon in the south of France there, as we are again just showing them hooked X's, which are on some of the doorways going right back to the 12th century, and also where the Templar signs are. Bottom left, we are in Rennes-le-Château. Now, I don't cover this in Truthseekers, but if you want to read a wonderful book on Rennes-le-Château, go and read Steve Berry's Templar Revelation. And I think it's Steve Berry's first book with his heroes, Cotton Malone and Cassiopeia Vitt are the two heroes in those books. That's also great books. So if you love Steve Berry and his books, you're going to love my books as well. If you like my books, go and check out Steve's book. We also went into some of the old Templar castles there, as you can see in the middle picture there. This one's covered in moss. It was fascinating. We took them to the Roquefort cheese factory, which was actually where all the Templar wealth was stored. It's a cheese factory that goes back to the 12th century. However, It's 11 stories high, and who has 11 stories of cheese in the 12th century when the population of France was about 100,000? No, it was the Templar storage of wealth. And then we moved to Scotland, and this is a photo of Linda here, who ran Soul Journeys for us right back then, standing at the Battle of Bannockburn, the place where Robert the Bruce, his statue is there. Look at the X on the bottom of it. It's not a hooked X, but that's pretty profound for me. And this is where the Templars joined with Robert the Bruce and allowed him in 1314 to actually win the Battle of Bannockburn, which is the reason why Scotland is a country. And then, of course, the Templars set up in Scotland, became the Freemasons. That's why you have the 33 degrees of Freemasonry, which leads back to the Egyptians, which is where the Templars got all of their knowledge from, where the Egyptian pharaoh would die and go into the cave of Sobek, the crocodile god, and sail on the 33rd parallel to find Marica, M-E-R-I-C-A, America. So that's exactly what the Templars did in 1314. They went for Marica on the 33rd parallel as well. We cover that in the book. Angkor Wat in Cambodia, I must have been there 10 times. So, you know, there are some hooked X's that you'll find all around Angkor Wat. You know, there's Templar initiation places in interesting places around the world. The bottom left here is Landy and I checking out some of the Templar sites in Portugal. And this is a 9-story deep, 9 levels deep Templar initiation there. And that photo is purely by accident. But it's pretty obvious there that I was being initiated at that time. Top right, I am in Crete there. We went and did site visits because the whole last part of the book plays out in Crete, and the last final scenes of the book is epic inside the home of the Minotaur, which is the Temple of Minos, where they are chasing the tripartite shrine, which is the shrine directly that I am pointing to at above there when I'm in Crete. We also deal with the Minoans and the Hopi Indians and the Ojibwa and the Chippewa Indians as well. So Landy and I did site visits there as well. This is Landy standing in front of a Hopi site there. I talk about Prophecy Rock in the book. Prophecy Rock is a very, very profound rock in America, and it's very significant in our lives in this world 100% today. If you want to read more about the Hopi, go and check out the Book of the Hopi if it inspires you to do so, and also American Indian Myths and Legends as well, which are 2 books that we picked up literally in New Mexico when we were in America, but I'm sure that you can get them on Amazon also. Look, Truthseekers is a deep book. It's fascinating. It winds around all sorts of places. It's very profound. It'll introduce you to the characters. You're also going to meet a couple of other cool characters there and a couple of really cool villains as well. Now, if you like books with twists and turns, then Truthseekers is your book. But all 3 of them are. All 3 of them have pretty magical twists that you simply don't see coming. I know when I put these books out to all my beta readers, one of the biggest bits of feedback I got, apart from check your spelling and your grammar, was that the twists in this, you just couldn't see them coming. And some of them are really, really fascinating. And I love the twists and turns in Truthseekers myself. I'm actually really proud of thinking to getting to thinking at that level and being able to produce something that's really going to get you thinking and hopefully get you looking into some of this stuff as well. Because I talk in Truthseekers about the Telpiot tomb. There's a fantastic book written about 15 years ago called The Jesus Family Tomb. Definitely that was something we investigated also when we were in Israel. But definitely that if you want to read something up about has Jesus' tomb been found, has his ossuary been found, then the Jesus Family Tomb is a great book for you. Let's go on to the second book in the series, KV55. It's, from what I can tell, the only book in the world or anything in the world called KV55. So firstly, why is the title KV55? Well, KV55, if you go to Wikipedia, is the apparent burial spot of the pharaoh Akhenaten. Akhenaten was one of the most unusual pharaohs of Egypt. He changed the religion from all the old gods like Isis and Osiris and Set and Horus and all of those guys to monotheistic God. In other words, literally telling all of his people that they had to change overnight from honoring everybody to honoring one God, the Aten, the sun disk. So that was a major revolution. And in the book, I proposed that it came from literally the Santorini eruption, which we also talk about in Truthseekers in the first book, which happened around about 1500 BC, when the island of Santorini basically imploded in the middle, fell into the sea. It's the biggest eruption in recorded history. In fact, the tidal wave wiped out the Minoans. They were 80 kilometers away on Crete. That destroyed their whole civilization. It made the earth pretty much dark for 7 days. It killed all the crops of Egypt, etc., etc., etc. It was even recorded in Japan at the same time. So that's a long way away from Santorini, which is why when you go to the beautiful island of Santorini now, you have the caldera, which is the ocean at the bottom of the round circle of cliffs, just like Atlantis. And of course, you can go and have a drink in the Atlantis Hotel. Back to KV55. I don't for 1 minute believe that Akhenaten was buried in KV55 at any stage. Akhenaten, what he did is he moved the home or the capital of Egypt, ancient Egypt, from Luxor and started to build his own, which was in a place called Tel Amarna, halfway between Luxor and Cairo. And it's in the middle of the desert. There's not much left of it these days at all, but that was his capital city for 18 years of Akhenaten's reign. Akhenaten's wife was Nefertiti. You've probably heard of her apparently one of the most beautiful women to ever live. And he had many children. The pharaoh who came after him, Smenkare, was one of his children, but he lived a very short time. There's no recorded history of him really, apart from on the king's list at Abydos. And then after that came Tutankhamun, who we would know nothing about and is a relatively insignificant pharaoh, except for the fact that in 1922, Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's tomb with all the riches, and that taught us a lot about this. And that is a link in this book as well, because this book is about a particular stela that was, a stela is a rock tablet that was sent to Akhenaten by the king of Babylon, and a recorded message on that, which is quite cryptic, which is about anti-aging and the secret to youth, the secret to longevity. And you have to understand that in ancient Egypt, before the first pharaoh, which was Menes in 3114 BC, before that, there was a line of demigods. Now, a priest, a Greek priest called Manetho, captured all this information around about the time of the reign of the Ptolemies, which is Cleopatra, in Egypt, and recorded all of this. And he says there was a reign of demigods that reigned for 20,000 years, and before them, the gods that reigned. Now, he would have called the gods Isis and Osiris, and the demigods had different names. But all of those people were deemed to have had long life. And if you look at the history of the Anunnaki, which came from Babylon, Iraq, Iran, well, actually more Iraq, and look at that civilization there, those people were said to have lived hundreds, if not thousands of years. Go and read the Chronicles of Enki. That is the transcription of one of the Babylonian texts, which mysteriously disappeared during the Gulf War and is now locked up for safety in somewhere like the Smithsonian, never to be returned to the people of Iraq because they can't be trusted with whatever technology is on there. That is my opinion totally, but I do believe a lot of these wars and also the fights in Syria at the moment have less to do with what we're told it's about and more to do with a lot of the deep ancient wisdom that is now being found and located in these places and suddenly mysteriously disappears, never to be seen by us people again. Just like the sites in America that were recorded in the 1800s of giants or the red-haired people have disappeared as well, and are now sacred ground, and we can't go there, and we can't even LiDAR them or anything like that. Now, KV55 is the story also of Akhenaten and this anti-aging formula, but then the people who come after him, in particular, a pharaoh named A, who was Akhenaten's grand vizier, priest, the high priest for Akhenaten, who eventually became pharaoh at a very old age, probably 55, but it was a very old age in those days. And he actually married his granddaughter. I know, right? But it's the truth, it's history. And his granddaughter, who has a very long Egyptian name. We call her Anki in the book. I can't pronounce her long Egyptian name. I think it's Anki Pasparum, but we call her Anki in the book. They leave Egypt. They're run out of Egypt. They take 1,000 people. This is historical fact. And they leave Egypt. And where do they go? Well, they go originally to Spain, but that's a little bit unruly for them. So they head to the wonderful British Isles, to Scotland, where she becomes Queen Scota. Now, when you look at the history of this, and I don't want to give away anything that's in the book too much because I want you to understand this for yourself. But you will understand that when they found the burial tomb of what they call the Tara woman in Ireland, that she had around her neck, and it dates to the same time, faience beads. The faience beads are Egyptian beads that have only also been found on Tutankhamun's body when they found his tomb. So Tutankhamun's wearing these faience beads, and somebody called the Tara princess, who has Egyptian DNA, who's found buried from the same era in Ireland, has these faience beads. Could it not be technically one of the children or grandchildren of Akhenaten? You make up your own mind. There's some deep research about this. There's boats being found in estuaries around the UK that are on the same design as boats around the pyramid. Now, the pyramid and the Great Pyramid is, and the King's Chamber, which you look at the top there, and in the middle, you'll see me lying in what is the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber. Now, I can promise you, I don't go lying in coffins, and that would be the last thing I would ever want to do. There has never been a dead person buried in this. You can feel it when you get in the thing. Are you allowed in it? No. Do people surreptitiously get in it? Yes. Were we allowed to get in it? Yes. In fact, we were so lucky when we went there that by pure luck, and probably having a lot to do with what I wear around my neck and just the energy, something energetically happens that twice now when I've taken people there, and in this particular case with Lundy and me, we've had the whole place to ourselves. They've actually kept people out. And at one point we had the whole place to ourselves for 45 minutes. Yes, it cost me a few bucks, but that was a gift on the end. It wasn't intended at the start. And so we're being very lucky with that to be able to run ceremonies and rituals in the Great Pyramid. And I use, in fact, some of the things that happened there are actually in this book, and you can believe them or not believe them. It's totally up to you. You'll see Lundy inside the pyramid on the right there. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted. This is 100 meters. You walk underground, bent over like that. It hurts. Let me tell you, it's a real strain on your knees and on your back. On the left-hand side, we have Akhenaten, one of the statues made of him from the Egyptian Museum. And what you'll originally notice here is he has the long head, the elongated skull. So does Nefertiti. Go look at the bust of Nefertiti. Also, Akhenaten, in a number of his statues, portrays himself as fat or actually feminine in some way. So it's very, very interesting. He's quite an androgynous character. But if you believe that he may have had some alien DNA, well, elongated skull, children that also had elongated skull in the few reliefs that are left of Akhenaten. Now, we're also in Abu Simbel, which is where the bottom photo there is. And, you know, a lot of people have said I look like Ramses II, who is the sculpture there. So I just threw that one in for fun. But the lake and area around Abu Simbel features a lot in KV55. In KV55, the villains here are Michaela and Caspar Immerman, a Finnish couple who own Casmic Pharmaceuticals, who are, of course, after the secrets to longevity. And because they think it's going to make them billions upon billions upon billions, they hire an ex-mercenary, Ryan McCord, to go and obtain this information by, getting into bed with the curator of the Egyptian plateau, Dr. Nagi Kalada, who's not necessarily a good or bad character. I think you make up your own mind, but Nagi's always good for a quick buck. And they end up fighting to try and keep with the Truthseekers team, fighting to try and keep the secrets of the anti-aging for themselves. And of course, David and his team don't want that. So they end up going to Ireland. There's a whole scene that plays out in Ireland, and that's coming up next. So I also wanted to talk about a great book that you can read about if you wonder what the Great Pyramid of Egypt could have possibly been about. This is probably the most profound book that I read a long time ago. I gave this to somebody. I think that's Landy's hand holding that, or it might be my hand holding that book. Looks more like it probably looks more like my hand holding that book. Landy's got much better nails than me. And so this is the Giza Power Plant by Christopher Dunn, where he proposes that the technology that ancient Egypt had was to have this as a power source. And I couldn't agree more. I really love this. Now, in the last scene in the book, something happens inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it's based on something that happened to us many years ago when we ran a ceremony in Egypt. And when we came out, and you can't see these very well, like I didn't even have a phone with me when I snapped a camera with me. I snapped these on an old phone that I had at this stage. I think it was one of the first iPhones, and out of a bus as we were traveling along. But the beautiful crystal clear skies of Egypt for the past 100 days, as it had been, temperatures of 40 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. When we went in to do this ceremony, that's how it was. When we came out 2.5 hours later, they had had the biggest rain and hailstorm in over 100 years, streets flooding. You can see the car at the top there is almost underwater in the streets. And in the bottom there, you can see the streets of Cairo are literally underwater. Now, I can't say we did that. I can't say that we're that powerful and our team was that powerful to do that. But I can tell you that I've had more incredible experiences in Egypt and seen more things that I possibly couldn't have ever believed in my life than anywhere else on the planet. And I've seen a lot of stuff. I mean, we led soul journeys for 12 years and ran 26 of them personally at some of the most sacred sites on the planet. So I use exactly what happened in real life in the book here. So go and check that out. It's pretty phenomenal. And as I mentioned, this book is also in Ireland. As part of it plays out in Trinity College. It's an amazing research library at Trinity College. Look at all the books there. They go right back to Plato's accounts and things like that. It is a phenomenal place to go and hang out for days if you're somebody like me who just gets enamored with deep ancient wisdom and checking things out. And a key place here is Carhere Castle. I'd fully recommend doing a road trip of Ireland. It's just such a beautiful country. The people are magnificent. I always say the Irish are the unhappiest people in the world between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and the happiest people in the world from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. But really, we've got a key scene in the book that plays out in this castle, right exactly where Landy's standing right there. Let's talk about book 3, Ancestry. This is the third book in the series. This is all about, the closing down of the Nazis after the Second World War and the resurgence of the Fourth Reich. And I trace that through what has actually happened through the Nazis leaving Germany at the end of the Second World War, no, not Third World War, hopefully, Second World War, where they're being rounded up to stand trial at what was then the Nuremberg trials. But many of them never stood trial. Apparently, Hitler shot himself in a bunker. But as Landy said to a deep researcher on this subject, and we've got to remember her background is in psychology, said, name one villain in the whole of history, one megalomaniac that has ever taken his or her own life. It doesn't happen. They always think they're larger than life. And I think the same is for Hitler. And even if he did take his own life, why wasn't his remains recovered and put on show? Why did they scurry away to Russia where they're still buried somewhere? And they say they have his jawbone, but recent DNA tests around 6 years ago proved that it's a woman's jawbone. It's not Hitler's jawbone. at all. Oh, but they have his dental records. Well, if I wanted to escape, and I'm the Führer, I could definitely fake dental records. I could get doubles to be me. I could do all sorts of things to get away. Where did they go? South America is one of the main places they went. It's called the Rat Lines. You can go and investigate it. There's a great television documentary called Hunting Hitler. By the way, we got a lot further with some of the research than what they even managed to do in the show. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Ancestry is all about your DNA and what is happening with your DNA. And it occurred to me that when Lundy and I were on a DNA trip where we traced my ancestry in England a number of years ago, which I use part of that story, and I make a David Clark story in the book, is that I found out I was related to King Edward I. They called him Edward Longshanks. He was very tall. And we actually ended up in the castle there in Conway in Wales, where Eric Longshanks built that castle. But whilst we were doing that, I said to Lundy, we've traced our ancestry, we've done our DNA. It's fascinating. And I would recommend that anybody do it. But what if these companies are fronts? What if they're harvesting our DNA for some ulterior purpose? Now, in this case, in this book, I pitch what an ulterior purpose can be, and I think you'll find it very fascinating. Now, here we are in Patagonia. This is in the town of Bariloche, which is like the Switzerland of Patagonia in winter. It also has, I must recommend, it has over 140 chocolate shops in a town of about 50,000 people. Just a fantastic place. Great hot chocolates. But I snapped this photo on the left here. This is literally probably a kilometer, if that, from downtown. Beautiful old Bavarian-style house there. This is the home of Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, the author of the death camps, the person who did the experiments on children and twins in Auschwitz and women. So there he left Germany, went all the way to South America and lived quite a long life until he drowned in the 70s, I think, or might have been the 80s in Brazil. I think they actually got him in the end, but historically he drowned there. But this is his house. Nice flower garden, used to go to the market every day, just crazy stuff. If you don't believe me, here is Adolf Eichmann's passport, his Red Cross Vatican-approved passport copy here. You can find it on the internet, what he used to get to South America through the Rat Lines. The Rat Lines were a series of churches owned by the Vatican and safe houses that they got to ports from Germany, and then out of those ports took U-boats and some planes and hip-hopped across the ocean to South America. Here is Diego, who is an incredible individual, and myself at the Hitler House in Patagonia. This is tough to get to. This is television documentaries can't get there. They're blocked. They're not allowed inside. You as a tourist can't get there. We were very lucky. Sometimes when you have something that you're doing that's so important to you, like getting this message out through these books, the universe just opens up ways, like it did in Egypt and like it is done here in Patagonia. It got me to Diego, who is a college professor. He was working at Harvard or one of those places, and then sort of semi-retired to Patagonia with his family and started running tours. But he had a fascination with the Nazis and the Rat Lines. So he started running the Nazi tour. We hooked up with him, went on one of his tours, talked to him. I said I wanted to go to the Hitler House. He told me it was off bounds. 24 hours later, he was able to make it happen. And, it did cost a few bucks. I would definitely say that. It's not easy to get to. You drive for an hour and a half and then you take a boat for an hour. And often you get shot at by the trustees or the site manager who manages this site. That's happened to film crews. It didn't happen to us. We actually had permission. We weren't allowed to go inside. But the interesting thing about this house, as you can see, it's beautiful, designed by a German architect who had designed homes for leading Germans in the area for 20 years, even before the war, but had designed some of the most amazing homes there. The upstairs here is the exact same floor plan for bedrooms and bathrooms as the Berghof, Hitler's favorite house in the European side of his world. So surprise, surprise. So we're able to track here, and a lot of the Ancestry novel plays out here in secret bunkers that are actually a whole part of the Fourth Reich that sit underneath this house and in the forests behind here. There's literally nobody around, so even today. So, you know, strangely enough, this has area for a float plane. This has an area here for watchtowers. Goodness knows why anybody would build their house here with watchtowers. But this home was owned just after the Second World War by President Peron's 2IC. And of course, therefore, it was only available to bigwigs. And we don't doubt that leading Nazis came through this place. Was it ever Hitler's house? Energetically, I didn't feel so, although both Lundy and I felt once we'd visited it that he could have stayed there on a couple of nights of his journey. In Hunting Hitler, the program, they proposed that he died in Paraguay some years later. And but you can meet, and Diego, I didn't do this, but Diego could introduce me to 3 or 4 people in the town of Bariloche who are very, very old people now in their 80s who swear, one of them's even written a book on it, how he met and saw Adolf Hitler in Bariloche in the early 1950s. So it's a great conspiracy theory. I don't believe Hitler died in Berlin. I do believe he escaped. Whether he was here or not, I think there's enough evidence to say that he definitely made it to South America, but I'll leave that one up to you. But then we move from South America to another very strong German place of the world, which many of you may not understand, which is German East Africa, these days called Namibia. It's a beautiful country of 2 million people bordering the Congo, bordering Mozambique, and Mozambique, I'm totally wrong there, forget that one, bordering South Africa, and of course the Okavango Delta as well. This is the Skeleton Coast, a fascinating place. And if you want to know what Namibia is like, well, it's pretty much like, most of it's like the what you see on the right there. You know, a couple of jackals and a very dry and very harsh climate. Desert climate, but beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I definitely suggest you put it on your bucket list to go and visit some of the game farms, Etosha and Arindi, to name a couple there. They're some of the best in the world that I've been to. Just fabulous. But we propose that there is a Fourth Reich bunker actually in Namibia, because of course it's a German place. So a lot of people still speak German there. Swakopmund is a very German town there, which we really enjoyed when we were there in 2020. And it was 2020. Fantastic, fantastic place. So this novel has a lot of twists and turns. You are not going to believe the outcome of this novel. So what can you do? Thank you for being at my launch. Obviously, I want you to buy the books. Obviously, I want you to recommend the books to your friends if they like action or adventure or something that's along the lines of Clive Cussler, Dan Brown, James Rowland, Steve Berry, Ernest Dempsey, you know, even Lee Child. If they like those sort of shows, if they like something that's got adventure in it, based on a lot of reality, there's not a lot of real you know, superficial stuff in this. Sometimes in some of the authors I've mentioned, you know, dragons come from outer space. There's none of that in here. I've based it on what I believe can really happen. So, and is real in our worlds and things that I've personally experienced in my life as well. And if you look at that and go, has he experienced that? Well, yes, I have. So, so I'll leave those ones up to you. Personally, leave reviews on Amazon. That would be great. Let me know if you would like some more novels. If you like these books, I have a great premise for the 4th book. It's going to involve Captain Cook. And so it's going to be based in actually New Zealand and Australia primarily. So that's going to be the 4th book. I literally haven't started writing it yet. But if you want more, let me know, and I'm happy to give you more. And get behind these. They're fun, they're adventure, they're light. They'll be good for your holiday period and everything like that. So how do you get them? You can literally point your camera at the code here, or you can simply take a screenshot and then point a camera at it later. You can go to Amazon Kindle and you can search my name, Mike Handcock with a D, and you can click on the David Clarke series. They are live out today. We are live now on the 8th of November. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. Please put in any comments that you've got in the comments below. This is going to go up on YouTube. It's going to be shared around. So Thank you for coming. It's been an absolute joy writing these. I've got to see parts of the world and do things I never would have believed I'd do. I've been able to do them with the love of my life, Lundy Jack, the whole way. And Lundy, thank you so much, my darling. I just love you to bits. You are my sun, my moon, my everything. And none of this could happen without you. And nothing that we could do could happen without you. And for everybody out there who follows us, who's ever been to one of our events, who's been a client of ours, who has engaged with us anyway, who's bought a book and never told us that they even exist, thank you very, very much for who you are and for what you mean to us in our lives and the way in which you allow us to constantly lift you up and to help you and for all of us to play a bigger game. This has been one of my dreams to bring these novels to you. So don't welsh on your own dreams either. Bring your own dreams to life. Share them with your family, your friends, and with the greater world at large. So with that, I want to thank you very, very much for being here today. I want to thank you for everything that you do. Go and grab yourself the novels, share them with friends, and I will catch you later on some other thing we're doing somewhere. Catch you later. Bye-bye.